On a quiet Sunday evening, the kind where the weight of the past week settles heavily on your shoulders and pretending everything is fine becomes impossible, a single sentence shattered the life I had built with the man I once believed was my soulmate. I never meant to hurt him, and I had no idea he was close enough to hear me. But those careless words destroyed everything we had spent years creating together. My closest friend, Emily, had come over for a simple evening of wine and conversation. We sat comfortably in the living room, surrounded by the gentle stillness of the night. My husband, Michael, was supposedly upstairs sorting through old boxes in the attic, or at least that's what I believed. Emily and I were talking, although it was really me pouring out months of bottled up emotions while she quietly listened. The wine had lowered my guard, and the pressure of endless arguments, uncomfortable silence, and the deep exhaustion I'd been carrying finally spilled out like water breaking through a dam. "I don't know, Emily," I whispered, rubbing my aching temples. "Some days, I wish I had never married him." The instant those words left my lips, an icy feeling settled deep inside my stomach, as though I'd spoken something that could never be taken back. Emily immediately looked at me. "You don't really mean that," she said firmly. But the truth wasn't that simple. Part of me believed those words in the way people sometimes do when they're overwhelmed by routine, when love slowly becomes responsibility, and responsibility quietly transforms into regret. Yet another part of me still loved Michael, or at least, I believed I did. What I didn't know was that Michael had been standing silently on the staircase, hearing every single word. The following morning, the house felt strangely empty. The coffee maker hadn't been touched. Michael's keys weren't hanging beside the front door. His work boots, always neatly placed in the same spot, were gone. At first, I assumed he'd simply left early for work, but a quiet sense of dread slowly crept over me. Michael never left without kissing me goodbye, not even after our worst arguments. By lunchtime, I called his phone. There was no answer. I sent a text. Nothing. Growing desperate, I opened my laptop to email his work address. Instead, I found a message already waiting for me. The subject line contained only one word: farewell. "I overheard you last night," the email began. "I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did." Those weren't words spoken in anger. They were your truth. And that truth broke something inside me. I gave everything I had to this marriage. All this time you've been living with regret. Please don't look for me. The divorce papers have already been filed. I'm not angry. I simply refuse to spend my life being someone's regret. Signed, Michael. My breathing stopped for a moment. I read the email again. Then again. Every sentence struck my heart harder than the one before. There was no rage, no begging, no accusations, no desperate attempt to save what we had, only a quiet goodbye, a clean and final ending. I rushed to his office in downtown Portland, hoping I could still find him. Instead, I was told he had resigned earlier that morning. His desk had already been cleared. By that afternoon, his phone number no longer worked. His social media accounts had disappeared. None of our mutual friends knew where he'd gone. Even his brother would only say that Michael needed space and wanted absolutely no contact. It was as though he had simply disappeared from the world. Several days later, the divorce papers arrived, clean, official, prepared by an attorney in Seattle. Michael's signature was already waiting on every page. Everything had already been set into motion, without a single conversation, without one final chance. I had become nothing more than another name on a legal document, a signature, a checkbox, a completed process. I expected anger to come, or denial. Instead, all I felt was overwhelming guilt. Memories of our first years together flooded my mind. The way Michael looked at me as though I were the center of his entire world. The endless patience he showed whenever I needed space. The quiet strength he offered whenever life knocked me down. Then I remembered the look on his face during dinner only a few nights earlier. He looked tired, distant, yet he was still trying. He had never truly stopped showing up for us. I was the one who had slowly drifted away. Sleep abandoned me for weeks. I replayed that evening with Emily over and over again, questioning why I'd said those words, wondering whether I had truly meant them or whether I'd simply allowed frustration and exhaustion to replace honest conversations with my husband. The months slowly passed. Eventually, I hired a private investigator in Denver to search for Michael. But there was nothing. No address, no financial records, no trace of where he'd gone. It was as if he had erased every piece of himself. As time passed, I finally understood why. Hearing those words, especially when he believed they weren't meant for him, wasn't simply painful. It changed everything. It confirmed the fear he had quietly carried inside for far too long. Without realizing it, I had allowed my love for him to fade in silence. And the moment he heard me admit it aloud, he chose to leave. Not because he hated me, but because he wanted to protect the last piece of his dignity. Now I often wonder where Michael is. Is he finally happy? Has he found someone who wakes up every morning grateful they chose him? Because now, looking back, I know he was the greatest choice I ever made. I just realized it far too late. Michael disappeared to find the peace I could no longer give him, and all he left behind was the endless echo of my own careless words. Words I will never have the chance to take back.